Aunt whispered. Don't confuse Grandma with your pronouns. Then begged me to interpret her aged care contract. I was halfway through saying, Hi Grandma, it's... when Aunt's hand closed around my elbow, her long fake nails pressing crescents into my jacket through the thin polyester. The aged care intake room smelled like disinfectant, overripe roses, and instant coffee. A TV in the corner was playing midday news on low volume, subtitles half a second behind. Grandma was sitting in the vinyl armchair by the window, her tiny frame swallowed by one of those beige cardigans all old ladies seem to get issued automatically at a certain age. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. There's my clever girl, she said, even before Aunt could intercept, her voice wobbling but so certain that it punched me right in the chest. Aunt leaned in, her perfume a thick floral wall between us, and hissed that line in my ear. Don't confuse Grandma with your pronouns. She's too old for that nonsense. Then, without even letting my elbow go, she thrust a bulging yellow folder into my free hand and said in her normal, bright voice, Since you're here, can you go through this aged care contract? I don't understand half of it. For a second, my brain just stalled. I stood there with my tote bag sliding off my shoulder, my chest still warm from Grandma calling me her clever girl. Aunt's fingers still clamped around my arm, a whole folder of someone's future shoved at me like junk mail. The fluorescent lights hummed. I could hear a kettle boiling somewhere down the corridor, and the faint squeak of a nurse's shoes on linoleum. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The reflexive part of me, the part that still wants to be helpful and good and easy, was already flipping the folder open, eyes darting over, accommodation payment, and means-tested care fee, and resident agreement. The newer part of me, the part that had worked so hard in therapy to grow a spine, was still stuck back on. Don't confuse Grandma with your pronouns. Confuse her. Like my existence was a logic puzzle instead of just me. Like I hadn't spent the last 2 years unlearning the idea that I was confusing on purpose. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything sort of collided like that. 2 years since I'd come out as non-binary. 1 year since Grandma's first fall, 3 months since the second one that scared everyone enough to finally talk about residential aged care. I'm 27, I use they/them pronouns, I work as a paralegal in a small suburban firm that does more conveyancing than courtroom drama. My entire extended family heard paralegal once and decided I was basically a free on-call lawyer, IT support, and life admin service rolled into one. Need your Centrelink form explained? Call me. New phone won't send picture messages? Call me. Daughter got a speeding fine? Hand it to me at Christmas lunch like a party favor. Grandma, to be clear, is my favorite person on earth. Has been since I was old enough to climb onto her lap. She's 89, 5 feet of stubbornness and rosewater perfume. She used to make me semolina cake and let me lick the spoon, tell me stories about coming to Australia on a ship when she was 18 with 2 dresses and sarcastic eyebrows. She's the one who slipped me $20 notes for ice cream all through high school, even when we both knew I'd probably spend it on second-hand books. When I came out to her, long after I'd told everyone else, because I was terrified, it didn't go perfectly, but she tried. My aunt is her eldest child. My mom is the middle one, and then there's Uncle Michael who lives 6 hours away and mostly contributes opinions via speakerphone. And has always been the one with capital opinions. She's the family organizer, the social calendar, the person who knows which cousin is pregnant, and which neighbor's dog died. She's also the one who still shares Facebook posts saying, "I'll never apologize for saying there are only 2 genders," and then in the next breath calls me to ask how to attach a PDF. When I first came out, it was like dropping a stone in a pond and watching who got splashed. I told Mum first. We were in her kitchen, the flickering fluorescent tube buzzing, the scent of chopped garlic on the cutting board. I was shaking so hard I nearly dropped my mug. "I've been wanting to talk to you," I said, the classic ominous opener. She put the knife down, looked at me with that eyebrow I inherited. "You're not pregnant, are you?" I barked out a laugh. No, God. Mom, no. It's about me. Gender. I did the whole wobbly explanation, how woman had always felt like a shirt that didn't fit quite right, how the word non-binary had been like finding the right size on a rack I didn't know existed, how I wanted to use they/them, how I wasn't changing my whole personality, just my pronouns and the way I understood myself. She went quiet. Really quiet. Then she said very slowly, "Okay. I don't fully understand, but I will try. So they. My child. Not my daughter. Not my son. My kid." She tested the words like she was trying on shoes. "You know your aunt is going to have a fit." She did try. She messes up sometimes, but she catches herself. She'll say, "She's sorry they," and then give me this little apologetic grimace and I'll nod and we move on. It's imperfect and real and I can feel the care underneath. Aunt was different. When we told her, she laughed. It wasn't mocking exactly, more like the sound you make when someone tells you an obviously bad joke. "Oh, for goodness sake," she said. "What do you mean you're not a girl? I've known you since you were in nappies. You can't just decide you're something else now. That's not how it works. It's not a decision like picking a dress," I said. "It's more like finally calling something by its real name instead of the wrong one." She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "Well, I'm not doing all this they/them nonsense," she said. "It's grammatically incorrect. I'm too old to relearn English." She was 54 at the time. Over the next few months, she tested every possible way of avoiding my pronouns, using my name 20 times in a sentence, referring to me as this one, introducing me as my niece, in this exaggerated way that made my skin crawl. The worst part was when she'd correct other people who were trying. My little cousin once said, "Oh yeah, they work at a law place." And Aunt immediately jumped in with, She works at a law place. We're not doing this. We was doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Grandma was in the room for some of those early conversations, knitting something mysterious and lumpy in the corner. She watched quietly, lips pressed together. A few days after one particularly tense family lunch, she called me when I was on my lunch break at work. "I don't understand everything," she said without introduction. "This what is it?" "Non-binary," I said, ducking into the stairwell for privacy. "Yes. That." I could hear her breathing on the line. "But I know you. You're my person." She hesitated then. "If you say this is what you are, okay. I will try. My English is already crooked anyway. What is one more thing to bend?" I leaned against the cold brick wall and cried. She did mess up, of course. She'd pat my hand and say, they are a good one, this one." And we'd both smile. And, meanwhile, would sigh dramatically whenever it happened, like we were forcing Grandma to do a mental backflip. Fast forward to now, Grandma's had 2 falls, her memory is not what it was, her arthritis is worse, and everyone is panicking about what to do. And naturally decided that what to do was put Grandma in the fancy aged care place near the good bakery. And everyone else sort of fell in line because the alternative was dealing with Centrelink paperwork and in-home care rosters. Mum asked me if I would go with them to the intake meeting. "You know how to read all that fine print," she said, twisting the tea towel in her hands. "And you can help translate the money stuff so your aunt doesn't sign something stupid." I said yes because it was Grandma. I would crawl over broken glass for that woman. So there we were, in that bleached little meeting room with the fake ferns and the inspirational poster about living your best life at every age. Aunt still gripping my elbow like I was a rebellious toddler, Grandma smiling at me like I hung the moon. Aunt's whisper still echoed in my ear. "Don't confuse Grandma with your pronouns." Right as she shoved the future of Grandma's care into my hands and said, "You're the clever one, you explained this." I took a breath and gently slid my arm out of her fingers. "I need my hand to read," I said, aiming for lightness and landing somewhere closer to brittle. She didn't seem to notice. The admissions coordinator, a woman named Kelly with impossibly white teeth and a cardigan with the facility logo stitched on it, smiled brightly. "We're so glad you could all make it," she chirped. "These things can be overwhelming, I know. Tell me about it," Aunt said, rolling her eyes. "I've barely slept worrying about all this money business." She leaned back in her chair and nudged my knee with hers. "Good thing we brought our in-house lawyer, hey?" "I'm not a lawyer," I said automatically. "I'm a paralegal." "Same thing," she said, waving a hand. "It's really not, but sure." Kelly started explaining things in her practiced, soothing voice. "So this is the resident agreement. It outlines things like the basic daily fee, which is 85% of the single-age pension, and any means-tested care fee, which Services Australia assesses based on your income and assets. There's also the accommodation payment, which can be paid as a refundable accommodation deposit, or— Aunt's eyes glazed over approximately 3 words in. She shot me a helpless look, then cut Kelly off. "Can you just talk to them?" she said, nodding at me. "They understand all this. I don't speak government." That made Grandma chuckle. "You barely speak English," she said, patting Aunt's hand. Everyone laughed politely except me. My brain had gone back to that folder. The word, refundable, was doing a little dance under my eyes, considering how little in life is truly refundable. "Sure," I said. "I can read through it." Kelly excused herself to get someone to photocopy Grandma's Medicare card, and immediately spun her chair toward me. "So what's the damage?" she asked, in that half-joking tone people use when they want you to sugarcoat the truth. I started flipping through the contract, scanning like I do at work, headings, clause numbers, the tiny landmines hidden in, including but not limited to. There was the section about services, meals, laundry, social activities. The bit about restrictions, not bringing in large appliances without prior approval, R.I.P. Grandma's ancient toaster. Then the juicy bit, fees. "This part is about the daily fee," I said, tapping the table. "That's pretty standard, everyone pays that. It's basically a contribution to living costs." "So that comes out of her pension?" Aunt asked. "Yeah. Most of it," I said. "Then there's this means-tested fee, which Services Australia calculates. It depends on what assets Grandma has in her name. House, savings, that kind of thing." Aunt pursed her lips. "The house is in my name," she said quickly. That made me look up. "Since when?" She shifted in her seat. "Last year," she said. "We did the transfer when the doctor said she shouldn't be living alone, remember? It was easier to have things in my name so I could manage the bills." I did remember something about Aunt triumphantly announcing, "I'm Mum's power of attorney now," at Easter, like she'd been appointed queen. I did not remember hearing that the actual house title had been changed. "Okay," I said slowly. "So Grandma doesn't own any real estate in her name right now?" Aunt shook her head, a little too firmly. "Nope. Only a small amount in her savings account. That's what we told Centrelink." I stared at her. There are a lot of reasons people move assets out of an elderly parent's name. Sometimes it's genuinely about practicalities. Sometimes it's about reducing aged care fees. Sometimes it's about making sure certain siblings can't get their grubby hands on it. Usually it's some unholy mix of all three. "What?" she said, defensive under my silence. "Nothing," I said, because this was not the moment to unpack whether she'd effectively made herself the sole owner of Grandma's house. I turned back to the contract. "Anyway, the big thing is this bit about the accommodation payment. There's an option to pay it as a lump sum, which you get refunded when the person leaves or passes away, or as a daily fee, or a combination." She pointed to a number on the page, her finger leaving a tiny smear of pink nail polish. "What's that mean?" "It's the maximum refundable accommodation deposit," I said. "That's the most they can ask for up front. It's a lot." She looked at the figure and whistled. Jesus! Who's got that kind of money lying around? Kelly reappeared then, all smiles, and started explaining the different ways it could be structured, like we were choosing a mobile plan instead of where my grandmother would possibly die. And kept peeking at me, like she was waiting for me to nod or shake my head. At some point, Grandma reached out a tremoring hand and laid it on the folder. What does it say about them? She asked, nodding at me. All three of us looked at her. What do you mean, Mama? Aunt asked, smoothing Grandma's cardigan automatically. She frowned. If I go in here, who can tell them? She pointed at me again. To go away if they want to visit? Kelly smiled indulgently. We would never stop family visiting, she said. We actually encourage it. We have no restriction on visiting hours for close family. The agreement just asks that you let staff know if you're coming in late at night. That's not what she means, I said softly. I turned to Grandma. Are you worried someone will keep me away? Grandma's eyes flicked to Aunt's hand, which was still on mine, and then back to my face. She didn't answer the question directly. You read it, she said. Tell me if there's something I should worry about. Aunt huffed. Mom, no one is going to ban your. She stumbled on the word. Alex from coming. Don't be silly. Up until that moment, I'd been handling the contract like it was work. Scan, summarize, highlight the bits that matter. Hearing Grandma ask that cracked something open. Because I was worried, actually. Not about visiting hours, Kelly was right. They can't just randomly ban family, but about influence. About the way Aunt already felt entitled to speak for everyone, especially Grandma. About the way she was perfectly comfortable telling me how to be around Grandma. Don't confuse her. While simultaneously expecting me to be the translator of this massive, life-altering document. I'll go through it properly at home, I said, closing the folder gently. I want to read every page before you sign anything, Grandma. Aunt looked annoyed. You can't just do it now. It's 47 pages, I said. And I don't want to miss something because we're rushing. You wouldn't want me to skim your mortgage contract, would you? She made a face. Fine, she said. But we need to sign by Friday to secure the room. They said that on the phone? Kelly nodded apologetically. We can hold it till then, she said. After that, we can't guarantee availability. High care beds are very in demand right now. Grandma patted my hand. You take it, she said. You always read the things no one else wants to read. Occupational hazard, I said, trying to joke. My stomach felt like it had a rock in it. We finished the meeting. There were tours of the common areas, more forms, someone offering us tea in polystyrene cups. Aunt chattered nonstop about activity schedules and hairdresser visits, performing the role of dutiful daughter so hard it looked exhausting. Grandma held my arm as we walked down the corridor, leaning her whole weight onto me between those wheelie walker steps. You're quiet, she said eventually. Just thinking, I said. Dangerous, she croaked, and gave me a little elbow nudge. Back in the car park, and tossed me the keys to her SUV like we were in some American movie. Can you drive? She said. My brain is fried. I'll sit in the back with Mum. I did. As I pulled out of the lot, I caught Aunt's eyes in the rearview mirror. She looked tired for once. Under the thick eyeliner, I could see the creases of worry. It was almost enough to make me forgive her for earlier. Almost. We dropped Grandma back at her house, still her house in every way that mattered, even if the land title said otherwise, and settled her into her recliner with a cup of tea and the remote. Aunt fussed over her pillows. You'll come by tomorrow, Grandma said to me as I was leaving. Bring that contract. We'll read it together. I nodded. I will. In the driveway, Aunt finally circled back to the other subject. Can you please not make a big deal about your pronouns around her? She said, folding her arms over her chest. She's already scared. She doesn't need more confusion. I stared at her. You just asked me to reassure her that no one would keep me away from her, And you think the confusing part is me saying they? Aunt blew out a breath through her nose. You know what I mean, she said. She's old. She grew up in a different time. Just let her think of you as her granddaughter. Is that so awful? Here's the thing. A year ago, I probably would have swallowed it. I would have told myself, she's nearly 90, just let it go. And then cried in my car and vented to my group chat later. But something about holding that contract, about knowing how much power was being moved around while everyone pretended nothing fundamental was changing, made me feel done. I'm not going to sit her down and give her a gender studies lecture, I said. But I'm also not going to lie about who I am in the same breath that I'm asking her to sign away a chunk of her autonomy. That feels gross. Anne rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being consistent. She threw her hands up. Whatever. Just don't correct her if she calls you she. She's doing her best. I thought about Grandma on the phone, saying, what is one more thing to bend? I thought about her catching herself and saying, they, with a proud little smile like she'd solved a crossword clue. She is doing her best, I said. You're not. The look she gave me then could have curdled milk. You know what? She said. If you're going to be like this, maybe you shouldn't be the one handling her paperwork. You're making it all about you. And there it was. The implied threat. Do as I say, or I'll cut you out of the process and find someone else who'll be more compliant. My stomach dropped. I actually wanted to handle the paperwork, because I didn't trust her not to sign something that benefited her more than Grandma. But I also knew that letting her hold my identity hostage over that would set a pretty horrible precedent. I'm going to read the contract, I said slowly. For Grandma. Because she asked me to. You can decide what you do with my pronouns separately. She scoffed. You always think you know best, she said, and stomped back toward the house. That night, I spread the contract out on my own kitchen table, next to my half-eaten bowl of pasta. My flatmate Dan wandered in, saw the sea of paper, and whistled. That looks like hell, he said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. It is hell, I said. Government hell. He plopped down opposite me. Is this your grandma's thing? Yeah. Man. He took a swig. How's your aunt? A walking Facebook comments section, I muttered. She told me not to confuse Grandma with my pronouns and then handed me this. I gestured at the stack. Like, sorry that my existence is confusing, but not as confusing as the way accommodation payments get calculated apparently. He snorted. Want me to pretend to be your lawyer boss and call her to back you up? Tempting, I said. But I think that would actually give her a stroke. I read every line. I highlighted the clauses about interest on unpaid fees, about what happens if Grandma's care needs increase, about the facility's right to move residents to different rooms. I circled the section about residents' rights in red. I wrote a list of questions in my neatest handwriting because Grandma hates when I scribble. By the time I finished, my neck hurt and my eyes were burning. But I understood it. More importantly, I could explain it. The next day, I went back to Grandma's. She was in her usual spot in the lounge, a knitted blanket over her knees, daytime quiz show on mute. You look serious, she said as soon as she saw my face. This is serious, I said, dropping the contract on the coffee table. We went through it together, page by page. I translated. Means tested care fee. Into. The government checks what money you have and decides if you pay extra. I explained the difference between paying the big lump sum and paying a daily fee. I told her the pros and cons without pushing her either way. And hovered in the doorway for about 10 minutes, then got bored and went to hang the washing. Which, in Aunt speak, means stand in the yard and talk loudly on the phone to someone about how stressed I am. At one point, while we were on the section about visitors, Grandma stopped following the text altogether and just watched my face. You're good at this, she said suddenly. Reading? I joked. Turning hard words into soft ones, she said. Making things make sense. Something in my chest unclenched a little. Occupational hazard, I said again. She reached out and patted my hand. You always did that, even when you were small, she said. You would come home from school and tell me stories about your teachers, but you would tell the story sideways so I could see all the people in it, not just you. I smiled. I don't remember that. I do, she said. It's why I asked for you. We got to the end. She signed, her hand trembling, my eyes stinging. Aunt swooped back just in time to watch. Thank God that's sorted, Aunt said, taking the pen from Grandma's fingers before the ink was even dry. One less thing to worry about. Not really sorted, I said. There's still the Centrelink assessment, the actual move, the house. She waved me off. Details, she said. Later, as I was leaving, Grandma called me back. Hey, she said, voice soft. What do you want me to call you? I blinked. What do you mean? She made a little frustrated noise, searching for words. You said there is a new word. For you. Not girl. Not boy. Non-binary. I said. Yes. That, she said. And they. Them. You wrote it down for me, but I forgot where I put the paper. My throat went tight. We can write it again, I said. She nodded. I am old, she said. Things fall out of my head. But I want the right ones to go back in. Behind her, in the kitchen, I could see Aunt at the sink, pretending not to listen while very obviously listening. I just want you to call me whatever makes you feel comfortable, I said. She frowned. No, she said. I want to call you what makes you feel true. She tapped her temple. It is my head that must be comfortable with work. Not the other way. I laughed, one of those wet, half-sobbed laughs. Okay then, I said. They. Them. Your grandchild. Your kid. She nodded, satisfied. My clever one, she said. That one never changes. In the kitchen, Aunt clanged a plate down harder than necessary. I went home that day feeling weirdly steady. Like I'd finally found a small bit of ground that was mine in this whole swamp. Grandma knew enough. She wanted to try. That mattered more than whether Aunt ever got it. Of course, it didn't end there. Nothing with family ever does. Over the next week, I fielded approximately 1,000,000 texts from Aunt about next steps. Do we have to tell Centrelink about the house transfer? Are you sure this is the right amount for the daily fee? Can you come with me to the bank? I don't understand what they're saying. Every message started with, can you, or, do you mind? And none of them contained my pronouns. Or my name, actually. Just, you. At some point, on a night when I'd already stayed late at work drafting actual contracts for actual paying clients, I snapped. Me. I need you to stop treating me like free professional help. I'm happy to help Grandma. But this is a lot. The bubbles appeared almost instantly. And wow. Sorry for asking. I thought you'd want to help your grandmother. Me, I do. But this isn't just helping Grandma. This is you using me as your translator because you can't be bothered to read things yourself. There was a pause. Then, Aunt, you know what? I don't even know who you are anymore. That one made me laugh bitterly. I typed, deleted, retyped about 10 different responses from, that's because you refused to see me. 2. I'm the same person who fixed your tax return last year while you called me by the wrong pronouns. In the end, I went with me. I'm the same person who sat on Grandma's hospital bed with you and held her hand. The same person who spent 3 hours on the phone with my aged care so you didn't have to. The only difference is that now I'm asking to be treated with respect while I do it. She didn't reply. A few days later, Mum called, sounding wary. Your aunt is upset, she said. Shocked me, I said. She says you're refusing to help anymore. Mum went on. She says you're holding Grandma's care hostage over this gender thing. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Of course she does. We went through the whole story. I could hear Mum's sighs, the little hums she does when she's trying to stay neutral. I get it, she said finally. I do. She leans on you too much. We all do. But she's not wrong that it's a lot for one person. I know, I said. That's why I told her I'd help with Grandma's stuff, not hers. The problem is she doesn't see a difference. Mum was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Do you want me to say something to her?" The petty part of me wanted to say, "Yes, tell her to use my pronouns or get lost." The more tired part of me just wanted to crawl into bed and not think about any of it. "Maybe just tell her that I'm not her employee," I said. "And that if she wants my help, she has to stop pretending my pronouns are an optional extra." Mum made a noise that was half laugh, half groan. "That will go down well," she said. But there was a smile in her voice. "Okay. I'll try." I don't know what exactly she said, but the texts from Aunt slowed down after that. They didn't stop, but there were fewer panicked "Call me ASAP" messages and more. "Do you have time this week to talk about X?" Ones I could say yes or no to. Grandma moved into the aged care place 2 weeks later. The day we took her, she wore her good black pants and her favorite silk scarf. She gripped my hand and said, "If you cry, I will cry, so don't cry." I managed not to, until I got back to my car afterward and saw the little paper sign with her name on the door. Mary Kay. Just her first name and initial, typed in Arial. It felt too small for a life that big. In the months since, I visit her twice a week. Sometimes 3 if work is quiet. Aunt goes more. She lives closer and has more flexibility. We do coordinated visits when we can, and on those days Aunt will half-heartedly try to remember my pronouns if Grandma is paying attention. The rest of the time, she goes right back to she, like it's muscle memory. Grandma does her best. She'll say, "They came the other day. You know. Them," and waggle a finger at me like we're in on a joke. It's messy and human and somehow so much more respectful than Aunt's stubborn avoidance. We had a small blow-up last month, over something stupid like washing. Aunt accused me of making everything about identity, because I asked the staff to change my name on the visitor list from Miss to just my first name. "You're here to see Grandma, not to broadcast," she said. I looked at the whiteboard where they'd written, "Visitors today, Jenny, daughter, Sarah, granddaughter, Alex, grandchild," and felt this weird mix of hurt and relief. "I'm not broadcasting," I said. "I'm just trying not to disappear." That's what it feels like, half the time. Like I can either be useful or be myself, but not both in the same room. Like my pronouns are a luxury I'm supposed to leave at the door if I want to keep my place in the family. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people like my aunt thinking they're entitled to my brain, but not to the basic courtesy of calling me what I asked to be called. I'm tired of biting my tongue because now isn't the time, when, apparently, there's never a time. I'm tired of being told I'm confusing, when I've never felt clearer about who I am. And I'm also tired of feeling guilty for drawing lines. Because here's the thing, I can walk away. I could, in theory, say, "You know what, you didn't want my confusing pronouns, so you can figure out your confusing contracts without me." I could wash my hands of the whole thing. But then I picture Grandma sitting in that vinyl armchair, squinting at 47 pages of legalese with her arthritic hands, and I know I won't. Not for her. So I'm trying to find some middle ground that doesn't feel like self-erasure. The last time we had a family meeting at the facility, about changing her care plan now that she needs more help showering, the social worker asked if everyone could introduce themselves and their relationship to Mary. Aunt went first. "I'm Sarah, eldest daughter," she said, voice firm. Mum said, "Jenny, middle daughter." Uncle Michael was on speaker. "Michael, youngest son." When it was my turn, I took a breath. "I'm Alex," I said. "Grandchild. I use they/them pronouns." Aunt stiffened, of course. Mum shot me a quick little proud glance. The social worker nodded and repeated. They. Like it was the easiest thing in the world. Grandma, from her chair, patted my knee. My clever one, she said. They read all the papers. Nobody died. The ceiling didn't crumble. The social worker didn't burst into flames. Aunt rolled her eyes, but the meeting moved on. It was such a small thing, really. Just a word. But it felt like planting a flag. That night, my phone buzzed. I expected fireworks from Aunt. Instead, it was a text from Mum. Mum, you did good today. Dad would have sulked, but Mum would have rolled her eyes at him and smiled at you. I sat on my couch, contract-free for once, and cried over that. So yeah? Aunt whispered. Don't confuse Grandma with your pronouns. Then begged me to interpret her aged care contract. I'm still interpreting things, fees, forms, my own patience level. But I'm done pretending my identity is the confusing part. Grandma gets it enough to try. For now, that's who I'm showing up for. Everyone else can either adjust, or hire their own damn lawyer.